She's one of the most distinctive faces in pop. Quirky, ever-changing, always surprising. Her music is impossible to label. She's sold over 15 million albums and appeals to both the underground and the mainstream.
I think she is genuinely, in popular music, the only true innovative artist that's out there.
She's on a whole nother level of music, and the sounds and the beats that she does is unheard of.
If you ever get close to a human and human behavior.
If you call her a pop singer, it belittles her. If you call her an opera singer, it belittles her. If you call her an Icelandic singer, it belittles her. She's a damn sight more interesting than most so-called contemporary classical composers.
She was born with a voice that's very sexual, but at the same time very childlike, very vicious and like powerful, but no sense that she'd ever do damage.
There's something very beautiful and yet lonely about the sound. You feel like a ship captain in the middle of the night coming at an iceberg, and the iceberg is our culture, and from behind it is this last love letter coming of a voice, you know, and it's something very, magical and clearly very ethereal about the sound. The Darwin theory, we come from water, and she seems to clearly prove that. She seems to come from water somehow.
It's 15 years since Bjork dropped into our world from the edge of the Arctic Circle. During that time, her name has become synonymous with Iceland. Both her character and her music have been shaped by the extreme landscape of her native country.
I think the biggest influence Iceland has had on my music is organic. This thing with 22-hour daylight in the summer and darkness in the winter is absolutely normal, and icebergs and eruptions and no trees at all is the way it should be. Iceland probably affected a lot how I sing, because I did spend a lot of time as a kid in nature. The way I sang would just form itself. It was definitely not influenced by other singers. Just walking outside to school or maybe in blizzards, it's just kind of like happened, and you would walk and there'd be no wind and you could be all quiet and whispery, and you would sneak down next to the moss and maybe sing a verse, and then you would stand up and run to a hill and sing a chorus. You have to do that quite loudly because the weather was strong.
Bjork was born in Reykjavik in 1965 and grew up surrounded by the raw, primal landscape of Iceland, but in a culture which was rapidly embracing modernity. She came from an artistic family, and at the age of 5, she was sent to classical music school.
We were introduced to the sort of easy listening classical greats of Europe, which was great to get inside you when you are that young, because you're listening to like Rimsky-Korsakov or something, and you're reacting to it completely intuitively, like on an emotional level.
Bjork was always singing as a child, and at the age of 11 she was persuaded to release an album of cover songs. It made her a child star in Iceland, but it wasn't a record she was proud of.
I felt funny about having an album out that said Bjork on it, and it wasn't my work. It was, I'd been collaborating and wrote just one song, but I sort of promised that to myself that I would never do that again unless I felt it was my album. not just something I fronted.
When the punk movement arrived in Iceland, Bjork was 14 years old and already singing in bands.
It became quite an explosion. And I remember a couple of years where everybody were in a band, like everyone. So it was a crazy period.
Takk fyrir, takk fyrir.
She was just like this strange little girlfriend of my best friend, you know. And she soon became quite involved in things we were exploring in poetry and with pictures and everything. At that time we were all self-publishing poets, selling our poems in the street. I think you can see in her writings and in the lyrics that she has begun writing about bodily desires mixed with a search for an emotional high. Her world is also very much a girl's world. It's about sexual awakening. This is very much her background. Serious avant-garde art.
The problem that had yet to be solved when punk happened in Iceland was to define what it was to be Icelandic. It was a question of not forgetting about nature, how important that is, not forget about the mythology that we have, that is very strong in our culture. I think all of it went together in quite an explosive pot.
The fusion of punk rock and surrealism resulted in the Sugar Cubes, the band which would make Bjork internationally famous.
I first heard Birthday on college radio. It was just unique and exciting, and it was, you know, one of those songs you hear and you have no idea what it is or where it came from.
Bjork singing Birthday, there's something unearthly about it. It's just so excessive and wild, and it just kind of goes against the grain of the music.
I think of her voice as not quite human. She had to be a really bad girl. She had to be really out to lunch to be sort of coming up with words like that. It sounds totally out of control, her voice, but it's not at all. You know, there's a sense in the voice of a tiny kid who's very, very childlike, but very brutal. It's this insane sort of innocence.
But after 5 years singing with the Sugar Cubes, Bjork had outgrown them and was ready to move on.
As much as intellectually, it was very, very stimulating to hang out with poets and authors. Musically, it just wasn't challenging anymore for me. I had just grown, become a little bit more mature, and I was craving and I was hungry to meet people who felt the same way about music as I did.
In 1990, Bjork approached Graham Massey from Manchester electronic band 808 State to collaborate with her on songs she'd been writing since childhood.
She phoned up while I was recording in the studio and announced herself as an Icelandic singer. She didn't say she was Bjork from the Sugar Cubes. She brought along a customary little ghetto blaster, and on it she had some brass band music well, it was like a brass quartet, a trombone, a trumpet, a saxophone or something, of all those early versions of the stuff off debut.
Bjork had been building up a collection of songs in her head since she was a little girl. She had given them to some Icelandic brass players to arrange, but was looking for a way to realise their full potential.
In summer '90, I did a little trip where I would bicycle between the churches. I would set myself a target that I would go and improvise and write one song and record it on my dictaphone. Já heima við sjóinn, og á nóttunni kafa ég niður undir allar niður á hafsbotninn og ég lauk út akkerið. Hér vil ég vera, hér á ég heima.
She sent me a load of tapes of quite earthy stuff, almost like, I wouldn't say folk music, but stuff that was very rootsy, quite a lot of jazz stuff, and I instantly connected with what she was trying to do on that level, you know, of trying to do something that was quite soulful, but with electronic music.
The resulting fusion of musical styles was the groundbreaking solo album Debut, released in 1993.
Debut was the perfect synthesis of all the good things that were happening in London in 1993. You know, there was dance and club culture, and there was the trip hop scene, which was just taking off, and you know, there were the Indian influences that she tapped into, you know, by having Talvin sing on the album. It was all in there, but it was all synthesized into this just this wonderful concoction that didn't sound like anything else.
She was way ahead of her time. She got like a twist, she got kind of like these hip hop beats, but then there's other kind of music that's over it, and she's singing just a whole different kind of way.
The singing she does when the words aren't really sort of forming, it's just the best way to improvise. And a lot of time you can't tell the difference between whether the words are coherent or whether they're Icelandic or whether it's gibberish. For a singer, it's really frustrating sometimes to have a bunch of words in front of you.
She had the ability to get a huge range of emotions out in a single note. And that's something incredibly rare in music. I mean, that's, you know, only the great singers can do that.
It blew me away because I'd never heard music like that before. It was like classical music with pop and soul and everything. There's art in everything she does.
From the very start, Bjork made sure that the visual side of her work reflected the various moods and characters of her songs.
For every album I've done, there's been one character that does the albums. And then there'll be separate other little characters that are the songs. The debut character from the photograph on the cover, sort of a very shy, slightly polite kind of newcomer, and I think that's how I felt. The character that represents Post is kind of that wide-eyed girl from the country still, but she's been in a city for a while at that point and is consuming the city, and the city is consuming her.
Bjork's lyrics reflected her experience of the big city, but they were often written as modern fairy tales.
Every song I do, there is a story behind it, and the song often ends up being just the tip of the...
There is the dialogues and the collaborations, and I think that's something which is extremely important in terms of the 90s, and I think that's where is also a bridge, where Bjork, establishes a bridge from the music world to the art world.
And if you complain once more, you'll be done, I love you.
The scope of her work goes far beyond the pop world, and in this sense she's what one could call a complete artist. Bjork's work is equally important in the visual art context, as it's in an experimental sound context, as it's in the pop world, as it is in a museum context.
On Post, Bjork further developed her interest in industrial sounds and experimental electronic music.
It was an interesting period in pop music. We were moving into a new era, sonically. And people with their computers and their synthesizers in bedrooms all over the world, discovering new sounds all the time.
A lot of people who aren't that musical would say, oh, it's a lot of old rubbish and, it's noise, it's tuneless, right? But it's not. It's extremely clever, extremely musical, and extremely melodic. And it's far more sophisticated than most things that are out there by 100,000 miles.
Post, it was the album where my musical relationships with people in London were brought to a much further place. I was working with quite a lot of people I met in clubs and sort of the people I was hanging out with. And I guess those 3-4 years I lived in London, it had a lot of that energy. Not only in music, where I met people like Layla Arab and Talman Singh and Tricky, Goldie, these kind of people, but also for example, in fashion.
When Bjork lived in London, we had, all our friends were at the same neck of the woods. There was all from music, there was all from fashion, DJs, fashion designers, like Goldie, Tricky, Dante. A personal appearance is really like the world of Bjork. she transcends every norm. I think clothes are so important to Bjork, I think, because they're a statement about her time, her place in time, what she's going through emotionally.
Homogenic was very much about a person that's put into an impossible situation under a lot of pressure. I would work every day for like 16 hours. I think I had 2 days off in '93, 1 day off in '94, and it's including weekends and Christmas and everything. And I was doing kind of 50 things a day. And then you give and you give and you give and you give and you give, and then you feel you haven't got anything more to give. The homogenic character becomes like a warrior, and not a warrior with weapons that wants to fight back, but somebody who wants to fight with love.
For Homogenic, she rang me up. She explained what the album was feeling like. She said it was kind of a blue period in her life. I think she had just finished with Tricky, and she said it was kind of downbeat, very. And she had taken all these references from all around the world, all these types of different singing, kind of types of different pitches in her voice.
It was perfect. He came up with the throat rings I had, the big head, the contact lenses, the long fingernails, a sewn back costume. I couldn't move, but still had to send all the love in the world back to the camera. There was another element to that homogenic character that was quite important, was asking myself a lot of questions like, okay, you're international, your music is international, but what are you? Are you Icelandic? What are you? Where are you from? Like roots. And there was an attempt on homogenic to invent Icelandic modern pop music with the volcanic beats and very over-romantic, patriotic strings.
All these accidents that happen, follow the dot. Coincidence makes sense only with you. You don't have to speak. I feel emotional landscapes. They pass on me. The riddle gets old, and you push me up to this state of
whenever I listen to her sing, I always learn something, and I always think, oh my God, that's an incredible surprise to do that chord or that thing there. And completely, it throws me completely.
The beats on homogenic in songs like Yoga, where I literally got an engineer and collected volcanic beats.
Bjork definitely uses strange ideas for drums and for beats, but it still fits the part of the world she comes from, the folklore that surrounds it. And Bjork music and her sound it got that Norse and that northern feel to it. You know, it's like you could tell that the weather gets pretty cold out there. You know what I mean? Just in the O's of the voice. Coming from Iceland, there's a lot of mythology around that area. I do feel her voice connect to the Norse mythology. You got Freya, you got Odin, you got Thor, you got Loki. But if you look at Freya, she's a warrior type goddess. If you look at Bjork, you have a warrior princess type of woman, but she looks so innocent. She hit octaves that could communicate with the whales.
I do hear something in Bjork's music that seems to relate very strongly to the shamanistic idea that the world is full of spirits. And when it's, you know, the mobile phone or the laptop computer, and those spirits are as strong whether they're in new technology or whether they're in the paddle of a canoe or, you know, a rock in a landscape. But it's unusual these days for somebody to really explore those almost pagan ideas.
I'd always been 1000% certain that I was an atheist. And then slowly having to realize as I got a little bit older and maturer that perhaps I had a religion and it was nature.
She's very in touch with nature, and what comes out of her is coming from her absolute being. You know, however wonderful certain divas' voices are in the so-called classical world of the West, there's very little that's remotely primordial. One could say that she's the primordial voice of Iceland, I think.
Onto it. It was like Mozart at a rap show.
When I did Homogenic, I was kind of hitting 30, and it was that classic time where as a teenager I left my music school, classical music school, and you know, when I was 15, and gave them the big finger and all classical music is wrong. I think you sort of look back on all the things that influenced you, and you actually realize that if you like it or not, there have been things that influenced you and you can't ignore them. And I think the strings in Homogenic were very much about me confronting that. And these 8 players, they actually went to the same school as me. That was a very interesting time to analyze what would have happened to me if I would have gone down that road and become a composer.
I think there's nonsense of classical, but what is classical anyway? One cannot put labels on what she is. I suppose you could say that Bjork's roots are in a sense in the musical. She certainly loves when we're mucking around together and we've had something to drink. That's what we tend to do, is to sing songs from The King and I, things from Noel Coward, these kind of songs.
Video, it's also quiet. And I remember thinking she must be...
Me with script, which I first turned down, and then he approached me several more times with it. What is there to see? In the end, I read it, and then thought, wait a minute, maybe this is the film I've always wanted to do.
I've seen it all. I have seen the trees. I have seen the willow leaves dancing in the breeze. I've seen a man killed by his best friend and lives that were over before they were spent. I've seen what I was and I know what I'll be. I've seen it all, there is no more to see.
I think that from the first couple of frames, I trusted her as an actress.
Bjork is not a trained actor, so she worked out of instinct.
I don't know that someone of her temperament needs training in that sort of way, because if somebody's preserved their instincts from a young age, then training becomes an inhibitor.
Enough to one more would be green. I've seen what I was and I know what I'll be. I've seen it all, there is no more to see.
The role of Selma, the blind factory girl, won Bjork the Best Actress Award at the Cannes Film Festival.
Very grateful. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful. Thank you very much.
She was also nominated for an Oscar for the music and caused a stir by wearing a swan dress to the ceremony.
I've always loved the way she dresses. I mean, to me, it enraged me when all those stupid idiots in America who have no taste whatsoever and no idea of dress sense. I mean, all those actresses wear that, they all look the same. Bjork comes and is entirely herself and has, they don't have any irony in America and the humor in that outfit. And I just thought she looked fantastic. And of course, she got panned for it because the Americans, the land of Ralph Lauren, what can we say?
It's about synchronizing what happens inside and outside, that it's the same thing, not being able to relax unless that I look on the outside as I feel on the inside, and then I relax.
For her next album, Vespertine, Bjork began to investigate an interior world of miniature sounds and microbeats.
The girl in Dance in the Dark was very introvert and kind of heard all these noises inside her head, and it was kind of a bubble, like a locked universe. So with Vespertine, because it was an introvert album, it's more about what happens inside me. It's just sort of what happens underneath my skin, or my interior, or with Hidden Place, the things that travel outside my nose and inside my mouth and outside in my eyes. And so it's about how I deal with me and my body.
Hides in the hair. Can I hide there too? Hide in the hair of him.
During the making of Vespertine, Bjork left Europe and settled in New York.
I had sort of started to create that sound world in 97. Started collecting those microbeats and kind of was very interested in things like celestes and harps and music boxes. And it seemed like all sounds that are short and percussive and sweet. And then with the beats, again, it was all the kind of little insecty kind of noises. I needed someone who was like a virtuoso in the field. So I sent almost all the songs to Matmos.
As Matmos, what we do is try to make music out of unconventional or non-musical sources. So in the past, we've tried to create music entirely out of found objects in our house, and we wound up making a record out of whoopee cushions and balloons and latex clothing and walkie-talkies, and the last record was all the sounds of surgery, liposuction and nose jobs, etc. So we're continually trying to turn everyday sounds or unusual sounds into music.
At heart, she's quite a train spotter, I think, you know, and with success, she's fulfilled a duty to pull the avant-garde into pop. And not many people do that. She's one for taking risks, you know, she could have just continued to do the MTV pop thing. I'm sure that would have been the easiest route, but she never takes the easiest route, and she'll always want to sort of like pull in the strange people on the periphery of music into the thing that she's doing and make something bolder out of it.
On Vespertine, Bjork also revisited Nordic themes and sang with a choir of Inuit girls from Greenland.
I think I have a lot of affinity with Arctic places, and I think Mediterranean passion has been documented very well and been fashionable for centuries. But I think the Arctic brand of passion is different, and it's not more or less passion, it just lies different. It's a lot deeper.
And she can be sexual, but she's not going to be cliche sexual.
There is a constant conflict between the inner and the outer world, and the battlefield of this conflict is the body, often the sexual body. This is something that you can see in Bjork's videos.
What I've been doing has always been an erotic side to it, but it isn't maybe the sort of most traditional way of like fishnet stockings and, you know, S&M outfits. You know, I've always felt that was a bit the easy way out.
She's just speaking, you know, whatever she feels, and probably what a lot of, probably 95% of the women thinks.
What's great about pop music is that it very immediately can bring you to an emotional location that is very easily understood by most people just with the first few seconds. When people were asking me what sort of music I did actually sort of refer it to maybe some sort of a modern folk music.
I am strong in his hands. I am beyond me. On my own I am human, and I do false. I do confess. I feel you trickling down my shoulders from above.
There aren't that many talented people like Bjork around. Everybody else is so formulated, and she doesn't work within the confines of pop music. She's not interested in that. She's interested in breaking down barriers and doing exactly what she wants to do. She is entirely her own woman, and I love her for that.
You have to trust. I'm eternally yours. All that I gave them, I gave to you.
So you could easily align her with those great singers, the Piafs
in the sense of the emotion and the intensity and the grandeur.
So needy I've come first, but too raw to be embraced. Undo this privacy and put me in my place. A generous palm stroke, the hugest of hugs. Undo this privacy and embrace me, embrace me. I truly, with hand on my heart, feel that I'm doing music for the everyday person. Like I could have so easily gone and become a composer and done some avant-garde music in some corner for the chosen 11.5 person. But I've never wanted to do that. I think my role is more to be some sort of a communicator between all sort of different worlds. I want to do so many things and I've got so little time. I am strong in his hands. I am beyond me on my own. I am human and I do falls. She's strong in his hands. She is beyond her. On her own she is human and she does faults. She's strong in his hands. She's strong in his hands. She's strong in his hands. She's strong